Hello, I'm Professor Toby Hayes, and I'm the head of the School of Digital Arts at Manchester Metropolitan University. SODA is a diverse, multidisciplinary and visionary school of digital arts providing cutting-edge facilities, rigorous practical teaching, sector-leading research, and impactful knowledge exchange. We pioneer new forms of digital storytelling through the application of emerging digital technology to produce graduates that spearhead the UK's booming creative industry sector. As the composition of our everyday experiences is increasingly defined by the digital, SODA focuses on storytelling as the means by which we can navigate and make sense of the world. Storytelling has the capacity to be an agent for change, a means of empowerment, and a way to transform how things are done. School ambassadors such as film director Danny Boyle are powerful role models that teach us how local tales can have long-term global effects. Whether delivered through a film, soundtrack, dataset, video game, or multisensory environment, narratives capture our experience and fuel our imagination. To find novel, impactful uses for storytelling, SODA collaborates across the university, drawing in expertise from, for example, the humanities, law, maths, computing, health, and psychology. Externally, we work with sector-leading SMEs, national cultural organisations, and renowned international universities. These collaborations position us as a leading player on the world stage of digital arts and business. Our internationally renowned research and knowledge exchange programme is an integrated offer that reflects this cross-sector ambition with specialisms in AI-powered immersive documentary, expanded reality, and digital IP. We offer a curriculum that is imaginative, inspirational, and inclusive. Our innovative approaches to delivery are designed to cross boundaries and enable collaboration across fields of knowledge. Initiatives such as our collaborative labs, or collabs, run through SODA's courses. They position multidisciplinary research and live projects at the heart of teaching, building practical creative links between the business and creation of filmmaking, UX, animation, games art, photography, and sound design. Alliances with commercial and cultural partners on the delivery of these units guarantees that we are responsive to industry's needs. In this way, SODA also helps show industry glimpses of the future. We excel in leveraging the opportunities offered by state-of-the-art technologies such as multisensory 3D systems, speech recognition, and generative machine learning algorithms. Based in Manchester, SODA is ideally placed within a city globally renowned for its industrial drive. Over the past decade, the city has been transformed by a progressive digital agenda to become a leading powerhouse of the UK's digital economy. Key to its continued growth and success is the city's diverse population, which offers a wealth of creative talent and international connectivity to celebrate and draw upon. SODA's teaching and research aims to challenge narratives of inequality and exclusion via the principles of critical thinking, agility, and creative digital application. The university's first-generation programme and SJM Concerts Futures scholarships ensure that in SODA, marginalised voices and identities are listened to. They are amplified and channelled into modes of agency that challenge the status quo and help new stories, policies, and alliances to emerge. In this way, digital disruption can be understood not only as an important technological process, but also as a cultural driver for societal enrichment. The expertise gained in amplifying their own creative voices improves our students' chances of future employment as soundtrack designers, web developers, film directors, animators, or in newly emergent fields on the cusp of recognition. They are further enriched and strengthened via their communication and leadership skills, which we nurture through partnerships with the university's business school and our external partners. SODA empowers its students to be expert practitioners, creative collaborators, and ethical citizens. These principles are the foundations that the next generation of digital leaders will build upon. Together, we produce creative content that is made in Manchester and experienced across the world. We look forward to welcoming you into the new Soda building, which opens in September 2021. From myself and everyone in the Soda team, please stay safe during this uncertain and unprecedented time. I will now hand you over to my colleague. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy your time with us at Soda.
Hi, I'm Beth Senior, one of the senior lecturers at the School of Digital Arts, and I'm here today with my colleagues David Jackson, who is a lecturer in digital visualization and a postdoctoral research associate here in Soda, and Paul Proctor, who is our curriculum design and education lead. Today we're here to talk about our collabs, where Soda is implementing some new innovative approaches to teaching. And to start that off, Paul and David are going to give us a presentation on those collabs to give you an insight into what they are and how they work. Then we'll be following that up with a discussion before handing over to you for questions. If you'd like to pose a question during the event, you can go to the Slido website at www.slido.com and enter the event code 75431 and the QR code that you can currently see on the screen. But before we get to your questions, it's back to David and Paul for their presentation.
Thank you very much, Beth. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to introduce you to the exciting Collab space in Soda. But before I do that, I just want to introduce the 4 guiding principles or competencies that form the 4 pillars, if you like, of all of our programs in Soda. So the first is expertise, and that refers to the knowledge that students will develop of both their subject discipline and the wider subject areas within Soda. It ensures that all students will situate their practice through historical and cultural contexts and the contemporary issues and the debates that surround their subjects. Creative ensures that all our students are agile sense makers and that they're able to embrace ambiguity, and all of their students are expected to generate ideas and explore ideas through their processes and techniques that involve narrative and storytelling. Students are researchers in Soda, and they're therefore critical problem posers as well as problem solvers, with the confidence to make the appropriate decisions. We want our students to be individual and independent thinkers, but also great collaborators who display the right attitude to be team players. And this requires our crucial key personal skills that recognize and appreciate what people bring to the team. The central tenet of collaboration is the development of personal expression, empathy, citizenship, and general life skills. And lastly, we want our students to be both pragmatic and practical, to be able to find and exploit opportunities through imaginative making and producing. Students will develop technical literacies and build skill sets that cross both the critical and the creative and the systematic. These skills are central to most occupations within the digital and creative sectors and the cultural sectors, and should be seen as the central component that enables creative innovation. The collabs are integral to the future-facing curriculum in Soda. They're just one of a number of innovations that we're developing for the Soda curriculum. And they feed into our aspiration to be a leader in digital arts education. So let me introduce to you the Collab space in Soda and talk a little about what it offers in terms of new approaches to learning and teaching. The Soda Collab unit runs in term 1 and again in term 2. It's where the 4 research themes of Soda are addressed and explored, and they are machine, body, storytelling, society and storytelling. Students can choose from any one of these 4 units to complete. And associated to those are a number of collabs. So collabs are collaborative research spaces that can be driven by staff research, industry, civic, or research projects. They are transdisciplinary, they're thinking and making spaces, and above all, they're experimental and experiential spaces. So our students in those spaces will learn directly through involvement in new research. So let's dig just a little bit deeper. So, like most programs and BA courses throughout the country, our courses are developed into different levels. So for the undergraduate programs, we have level 4, which is the first year, level 5, second year, and level 6. So those are the 3 years that form our undergraduate programs. In addition to those in SODA, we have a master's programs, and of course, lastly, PhD or doctoral students. So those are the levels that we're dealing with in SODA and in undergraduate and postgraduate. Those are divided into terms. So all of our students will do those disciplines in terms 1 and in term 2. And that's a kind of linear part, if you like, the horizontal aspect of SODA. The collabs, however, are those spaces that cut right through all of the disciplines in SODA and all of the levels. All of the students, in other words, do the collabs, no matter which discipline they're doing or what level they're at. So let's give you an example of that. So let's imagine that a student chooses the machine option unit. There'll be a number of collabs that are attached to these. And students will naturally gravitate, we think, to the collab that best suits their interests. This way, students can enhance their knowledge and their skills whilst developing a deeper interest and thematic around what reflects their practice. Collabs are collaborative research spaces that can be driven by staff research, industry, civic, research projects. They're transdisciplinary, and they're spaces where academic staff, creative technologists, students, and everybody involved together can learn in project-based and project-led work. They are spaces where all our students and staff develop vital skills that are shared across all of these spaces. So these are part of our future-facing curriculum, which we think is imaginative, inspirational, and inclusive. It's a curriculum where content is research and industry informed. And lastly, where students can gain confident and become graduates that are ready for their future careers. So now I want to hand over to David, who is going to talk a little bit more about the research space in SODA. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, so I will just be telling you a little bit more about research and the themes in Collab before passing back to Beth for questions. So by keeping the lines between research and teaching open and perhaps a little ambiguous, we can bring the latest SODA research projects into the Collab classroom. In Collabs, students will not simply learn about new research through case studies and research findings. Students can become involved as co-researchers, prototype producers, and participants in testing. What they can take from these experiences is a practical appreciation of research that can be applied in their other projects. Staff teams from SODA's media disciplines will come together to work with students on projects that would be difficult or perhaps impossible within one discipline. This reflects common aspects of digital creative practice, where excellence is rarely the work of one person, but a coming together of disciplines in new and interesting ways. Collabs are also a space in which research partners from the creative digital industries, cultural and third sector will have the opportunity to work with students. By working with organisations that are active in industry, culture and society, students learn to conduct research in an impactful and responsive way. It is by reflecting and reporting on these processes that involvement in research becomes learning. So next, I just want to go through the 4 research themes in a little bit more detail. So we have body, machine, and storytelling and society, as Paul told us before. And these 4 overarching themes kind of help students to consider the digital arts through different lenses. So the first one I want to talk about is storytelling collabs. And the collabs for storytelling explore new narrative dynamics, researching the new forms and functions of storytelling in the digital age. And I'll just show you some examples to add and give you a bit of an illustration of what that might entail. So, for example, we might have options like cutscene, videography and animation for games, musical scores and sound for immersive drama, mapping an Afrofuturist story world in Manchester, or telling young carer stories using chatbots. Research themes for machine learning collab are broadly speaking about exploring disruptive systems, researching how creativity and computational practices, when combined, enable new methods of production and innovation. And examples of that would be, and these might be a little bit more using terms that you're not familiar with, or you may be very familiar with, but these really focus more on the technical aspects, I suppose, of creative problem solving. And so that's creating 3D and 2D visual assets for film using StyleGAN 2, or it might be designing workflows for live video capture in 3D gaming engines, or integrating audiovisual playback into conversational agents. Then we have the body collabs. So body collabs explore the role of our bodies within digital technologies and environments. They're researching the interaction between user and machine through concepts of embodiment, the senses, movement, and cognition. So some examples of that might be touch, taste, and smell in immersive installation, creating media experiences with partially sighted audiences, and realistic interactions with animated characters. And last, but certainly not least, we have the society collabs. And society collabs explore the relationship between digital culture and society, researching the ways in which technology is developed within and in response to our societies. Good examples of this might be visualizing social media data from Black Lives Matter protests, or digital curation in the post-COVID cultural sector, or finally developing representative media data sets for machine learning. And that's everything from the presentation. So I'll pass you back now to Beth so we can talk about that.
Okay. Thanks for that, David. There's a lot of information there, which is really good, and I'd definitely like to come back to some of that in there. I think the first thing I want to ask, though, to get a sense of where all this came from, was what was the inspiration for developing the collabs? Like, what was that original vision? To Paul, if you could start that one, please.
Sure. I think there were 2 essential inspirations for the collabs. The first is Well, when we were developing and designing the curriculum early on in the process, we invited all of our staff, all of our colleagues to come together in what we called a curriculum design sprint, where we had everybody just to explore ideas around the curriculum. So we were doing things, for example, like we're animating the curriculum, we drew it, we made it, constructed it, we even performed it. We did have a lot of fun, but there was a seriousness behind it, actually. And that was to try to develop a curriculum which is kind of more innovative and less traditional. So I think a lot came out of that. And the first thing really was this idea, one of the visuals that came from that process was an underground map. So we started to look at the curriculum as a kind of underground map, and where the stations are where the points where the students join. So the stations represented the projects, and then they became the collabs. So it was about intersections, really, about where students came together, and staff then came together in these stations where they could explore together various themes. So that was the first kind of inspiration behind the collabs. And the second one, for me, was a visit to Tisch Art School in New York City. And they're a very innovative school. And some of our colleagues over there were very kind enough to share some of their ideas with us. And they have these, those of you who are familiar with the American system, they have electives in their system. And they were developing some really interesting and innovative thematic electives. And we so really wanted to take those ideas back into the SODA space. But instead of offering them to just years, we wanted to offer them to all of our students, no matter which year. So all of our undergraduates, all of our postgraduates. And we want even to go into the doctoral space as well.
Right. I really like that idea of stations where everyone's meeting, and being from London and the London Underground, it's a much nicer way to think of it, because not necessarily a nice space. And I really like and you mentioned it in the presentation as well, that idea that it is something that runs all the way through, and that it sort of sits itself inside research. So I suppose, sorry, you were going to say?
I was just going to say that an additional aspect of looking at seeing the curriculum as a kind of underground map was this idea of the circle line, and the circle line being a jump on and jump off opportunities for students to do workshops. So we have a series of workshops that are running all of the time, and students, no matter where they are, can jump on, no matter what level they're on, they can jump on and jump off the circle line of workshops, if you like.
That's a really great analogy. I think the circle line's the most functional one in London as well. So that's really great. Yeah. We mentioned research quite a bit, and this idea that it runs all the way through. So when you talk about the research space that is the collabs, what's that going to mean in practice? If Paul and then David,
Yeah, I mean, the research spaces are places where our students will pick up those really key skills, the critical skills, the risk-taking, exploration, questioning. And what's really important to us about the collab spaces is that they are not really about the outcome, in the sense that we're not really expecting our students to come away from those spaces with an artifact. But they're much more about the student experience. They're much more about picking up those skills, those personal skills, and they're exploratory. And we want our students to make mistakes and take some risks in them. So really, the research collab spaces are very much about process rather than outcome.
Right.
Yeah,
David?
I would agree. Yeah, sorry, I would agree. Just really interesting as well, bringing in industrial and cultural partners, as I was saying earlier on. I think that's really essential to collabs, is this idea that it's a responsive space, that if you are an external organization then we want to, and you've got a problem in the digital arts, in production or whatever, we want to hear from you, and we want to help try and solve that through a collab space if it's appropriate. And it really came to the fore speaking to Adrian Woolard the other day. He's head of BBC R&D, but he's also joined us at kind of a part-time basis as an industrial engagement reader. So very much focused on applied research. And I think one of the things he said that really hit home for me was about this idea that what you have to do is keep looking and making sure that you're researching the right problems. It's not what the problems that you were talking about 2 years ago or a year ago, and that went really well last year as a bit of the curriculum, and it was easy to teach. It's, are we still asking the right questions, and are we still dealing with the right problems? And I think that's why it's such an exciting space, and why the selective model works so well for that, because we can just adapt it. If someone comes in with an interesting problem, then we research that. We don't do what we did last term or last year. So it's great in that space.
Yeah, because I mean, we these times that we're in at the moment, we know that problem solving, simple problems, people are solving the problem of how to plan their day, how to sort of like manage their lives. So that's really important, and in that space and collaborating on that problem solving. So that leads me really nicely into my next question was, if we're talking about all these people coming together, these industry, our students, all these interested parties, what could that structure of a group of collaborators working on a project look like in that space? To David, please.
It can take many forms, actually. I mean, one way that it could work really well is, I think, and Paul, we talked about this before, is we want it to be a very kind of level playing field, that people come in, right, students, staff, and industry, and they work together in a very kind of non-hierarchical way, because that's the way that we get creative ideas bubbling up. It doesn't matter who's had the idea, it's just as likely to come from a level 4 student as a level 6 student, or a member of staff, or someone from industry that we're working with. So I guess it really depends, but one of the typical ways that it would kind of form around would probably be if we were working with industry, and they wanted to come in and present a problem, we would do that, and then we would probably workshop it, and we'd kind of work that through, and over a number of different weeks, we go through different aspects of the problem, using things that students were learning in terms of prototyping, maybe in terms of field study research, and other relevant methodologies to kind of work. Depending on the problem, we'll use the methodologies that fit that. And all the time, the more involvement we can have with that partner, that external partner, the better, because the more likely that's going to end in a really fruitful and interesting kind of end.
So,
result.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
One of the things I wanted to just add to that was, and I'm not sure if it came through strongly in the presentation, hopefully, is that the Collab spaces are research spaces for everybody who's involved in it. So they're quite democratic in that sense. Of course, they're managed effectively, but nonetheless, everybody who's involved is on that level playing field. They engage and enter into that space, in the spirit of wanting to learn.
Yeah, because we talk a lot, don't we, about lifelong learning, and the idea that but being in the role of a tutor doesn't mean that you've got nothing to learn from everyone around you. So that the collabs, like you say, that there's it's not about hierarchy or this is my project. It's about working together on a space. So that is a really nice approach to teaching that we don't often get to see in our classrooms necessarily. What kind of projects would you like to see come out of that structure and space then? David?
I tried to give some examples of that in the presentation. Yeah. And I think as you go, one of the key things is that we talked about a lot is making sure that these are not extensions of, if you're doing a filmmaking MA, you don't go and then there isn't an MA kind of a filmmaking collab, because that's not what you want to get out of the collab. You don't want more of those skills. You want to get those skills in collaboration that Paul was talking. These hybrid skills that you just can't get if you stay in that one channel. So I think that's where it's really exciting. And it's not as if, the skills that Soda brings together, they're not, these are skills very closely related within industry, and these are kind of subjects that work together in the real world. So it makes hopefully it'll make a lot of sense.
So less about that final outcome and more about the process that you go through to get to it, or not get to it, maybe. What does that mean for the experience for the student? Like, so how will they, how could they apply what they're learning back to their subject? Because obviously it's still a unit, isn't it? So how is that going to feed back into their subject, do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in the presentation, the 4 themes are very broad. So, and the collabs that are attached to those themes are also quite focused. But what hopefully it will enable the students to do is choose a collab or a unit, a theme that best interests them. So they, for example, might want to take body and explore the themes within that, and then take that back into their own practice. So that experience really of working with other people in that space means that they can then learn from that and bring it directly into their own work. And that's really important. I think the other thing that I wanted to mention was, and I think also another important thing is, it's so rare actually that the students get an opportunity to kind of make their course bespoke. So when the students choose their unit, the units that they choose will be on their degree transcript. So there will be indication there of the units that they've done, and that will indicate their kind of specialism and their interest. I suppose a little bit like the minor electives that they have in the United States.
Yeah, and that's nice as well. It's a nice way to draw that out further, isn't it? That idea that, and also it'll give them a chance to explore the fact that they're not just, that they. We all know we're not one-dimensional, are we? We all have various interests. So the collabs is going to be a really nice to explore that.
Absolutely, and I think we would encourage our students to step outside of something that they're doing. So if their work is about body, for example, maybe we will say, well, why don't you try entering into the storytelling or the society unit, and that just takes you out of that space, and then and then you can bring it, whatever you've learned there, back into, and it just makes it a much richer experience when you're doing something that is unfamiliar.
It's funny because that's one of the things I was curious about that mixing, but of potentially of the themes. But like you said, we're interdisciplinary in every other aspect of our courses. So of course we'd be interdisciplinary in our themes and our approaches and the subjects that people would get involved in. So I think you've kind of answered what I was going to ask, which was, an example of a project that may exist within one of those themes, because we've talked about it in the presentation. Did you want to expand on that, or do?
I mean, I've just got one. Sorry, Paul. Do you want to speak? Yeah. No. I just had a thought of that we've been doing a project with Forever Holdings Limited, which is it's an experience with Nile Rodgers, the musician. It's a virtual experience where you can talk to Niall. It's been done with SMEs. It's also been done with Bright White, another SME, as well as FHL. But what's interesting about that is if you think about the different ways that could be split up. So you could talk about conversational agents in the machine theme. So like, how do we build this? How do we build this thing in a creative and interesting way? got storytelling. It's like how do we tell fantastic anecdotes about his fantastic anecdotes about Prince, Jimi Hendrix, David Bowie, in a way it feels like you're sitting with him and you know him. And the body also, considerations of, in that project, there's things that, things as simple as like, how far away do we sit from Niall in a virtual environment? I think things like questions like that are really great ways to kind of reframe the problem. And finally, just to say, society, deep fake versus real footage. There's an experience here that's based on real footage. Is that going to be felt differently if you are experiencing it? You know that it's been faked, or if you know that it's been it's a real piece of film of Niall. So just an example there.
Yeah, no, that's lovely as well, and it really harnesses the way that we're all living our lives at the moment as well. I think it's something that maybe this time last year people wouldn't have necessarily been able to conceptualize or contextualize for themselves, but now that's something that's they might feel a lot more kind of embrace it a lot more, and it feels much more like familiar territory. We talked a lot about. Sorry, go.
Sorry, Beth. I just want to say that I think an important aspect of the student experience actually is it's not just meeting other people. It's actually their experience of, going from what David was saying about working. Let's say a filmmaker working with a sound student, in that space, and they're picking up those skills and that knowledge whilst they're in that space. And that, hopefully, what that will do is once they meet and they find something in common, that perhaps they can take that back into their project work and work collaboratively in the core units as well.
Yeah.
But I just one last thing, and it comes to the core really of why we're making these collabs, and this idea of things being siloed, because in higher education, most subjects are pretty siloed, if not utterly siloed. And what we're doing is trying to break down those silos, not just within the arts, but within science and education and other faculties within the university as well. And an inspiration for that actually is not just something that we kind of like to do. It's inspired by a general move towards transdisciplinarity. What industry is recognizing is that it has to collaborate to innovate. It has to, be thinking about bringing subjects together, and at the touch points of those subjects might come new innovation. So that's really the inspiration for us as making these collabs, to try to help the students innovate through working with other people and the touch points that they have between their various subject disciplines.
Brilliant. And that again, the idea that collaboration is just coming through for me so very clearly.
Absolutely.
We talked a little bit earlier about this idea of experimentation. So how do you think, how important do you think failure is? We're so scared of the idea of failure, but how do you think important it is as a vehicle for change and exploration? How can we help people be brave and be really daring within their ideas and within either a collab space or theme?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like us all and our students as well, they're very embedded in this culture of performance and achievement. And that's normally, in their eyes, kind of validated through kind of marks that they get and so on. I'm not saying that isn't important, but the collab spaces really are trying to remove students from that thinking to a large extent. So they become more about process. They become more about engaging with others and picking up those kind of career skills and so on. And a part of that also is this idea of making mistakes. I mean, making errors, failing, which is kind of in our culture is seen as not at all, something to strive for. We want our students to do that because we want them to test ideas and make prototypes and not be afraid of it not working. Very often, creative projects come from failure.
Yeah, definitely. That old adage, "Learn from your mistakes," is, Dave, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it's not, I mean, people may be kind of very familiar with this, but it's about encouraging risk taking, which is really what creative processes offer the world. It is this like ability to, not, as we were saying earlier, not just like problem solve, but figure out what the problem is by asking the right questions to figure out the problem in the first place. But you to kind of be ambitious means almost it's packed into that is to fail, to fail more. And if after this a student sets up their own, their own company, and the first time they try it, they end up having to get a job, just 6 months later in a different thing. It's picking yourself back up from that is really important, because it's realistically what's going to happen to a large percentage of people. And I mean, we obviously want to get students prepared so that that they're robust, but also just so that they actually try those things out. They're learning at this point, and every educator wants students to feel that they're empowered to do that. And take risks.
It's about valuing that part of the process, isn't it? Valuing
it's also very much about
succeed.
It's so much about the students learning how to be resilient. As David was saying, to pick themselves up when things don't work, and actually value the mistakes that they've made, value their failures, and learn from them.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's like, which it does lead me to my next question, actually. But it's like when we tell our own stories about our own lives or incidents, quite often the ones that resonate and remember the ones where you've made a mistake, you've fallen, you've not embarrassed yourself, but those are the kind of little life lessons and stories that stick with you, and you can look back on really quite fondly sometimes. I'm like, oh, do you remember when I did that? So that's I think it is really important to not be scared of that. So I suppose I'd like to ask, we're going to go into some open questions in a minute, but I'd also like to ask, we are living in a new world, and we are seeing new forms and functions for stories in this digital age. And storytelling is such a major part and ethos of the Soda offer. So how might those themes of storytelling be approached in the collabs? I know there's a storytelling collab, but like I said, it's part of the Soda offer. So how might these digital stories evolve in the collabs?
I mean, one of the key ways, again, is to be, by bringing in people. I mean, it will happen also with our academic colleagues, but also just people from cultural sector, from the third sector coming in, and with stories. For example, I've worked recently with GADM, who are a Manchester-based support charity. Apologies, and they've got young carers that they're working with, and young carers are there going, we want to be heard. The ones that are organised, they're like a hard to find audience group who do amazing work looking after relatives or loved ones, and they've got amazing stories, and now that, I mean, there is some really great work spearheaded by GADM, but also we were doing a project around how they could use emotion sensing technology and music technology to kind of tell their stories or cope with feelings of loneliness. And I think that's where you have to go. The story, you don't sit there and work it all out. Like you said, these digital technology is allowing us to connect, and we want to, as Toby was talking about at the beginning, we want to be telling the stories, especially the stories of the marginalized, because I think those are the most interesting stories, to be honest, right now.
Yeah, they are. I mean, sorry, Paul.
So for me, the really exciting thing is that the technology now is becoming cheaper, which means that more and globally people are able to buy into this technology, and those stories that would never have been told previously can now be told through those technologies. So I think, you know, it's very exciting for us, and thinking internationally, you know, how we can connect with these people who previously have not been able to tell their story for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about before, haven't we, that we've seen the rise in what is, in fact, David, you introduced me to the phrase, actually, of citizen journalism. That idea that, you know, if, you know, we've seen such a lot of kind of personal social media reporting of people's lives, and, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement that you mentioned in your presentation, sort of moving through, and how people are recording those experiences. And everything's being captured. All these journeys and all these experiences are being captured. So yeah, I think the fact that SODA is situating itself as a, you know, the School of Digital Arts with that idea of future storytelling at its heart, of how it wants to express itself, is, I think that's really important. I'm just a little bit conscious that we've got some questions coming in, and I'd really like to go over to some of those live questions now. So I'll just adjust myself a little bit. So yeah, I'll end up looking off to the side a bit, but that's fine. So I'm just going to go in order. So we had a question in from Mark, and it said, who best to contact should we have potential projects for collaboration, please? There we go. Who's the best person to contact if you want to get in touch with us about collaboration projects?
Shall I answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, David.
We're all very much, you know, keen to speak to people individually. There's an email address at the end of this presentation, which you can get in touch with that, but also, you know, by all means, reach out to us through other channels if you'd like to speak to any of us individually.
Cool, brilliant. And like you said, that yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's kind of it's going to be the lifeblood of Collab, so we really want to hear.
Yeah, we do want to hear from people, don't we? There's also one that says, what relationships does SODA have with employers and industry professionals? Paul, do you want to take that one?
Well, we have in SODA an industry advisory board. So industry is very embedded into what we do. They are the board that is our go-to, if you like, with regards to industry and how the industry is changing, what the industry wants actually, and that is changing pretty quickly. So we have partners that are coming on board all of the time. I mean, I don't know, David, you maybe want to talk about some of those in a bit more detail, but certainly the advisory board is very, very central to informing what we do in SODA.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I was just going to say, we've also, from a research point of view, I mentioned I name dropped Adrian Woolard from BBC R&D, but we've also got Elvid Howells, who's ex-Dolby, and he's doing a fantastic job connecting us up with lots of new. Every week there's new people that we're connecting with, so I think for a kind of a more detailed list, it's probably a more protracted conversation.
Yeah, and as we know, so I was just going to say some of our links are on our website, aren't they? So people will be able to find it there as well after.
Yeah. So another thing that I wanted to mention, Beth, which I didn't get really chance to, in terms of the curriculum, is that SODA also offers a number of degree apprenticeship programs. And those who are familiar with degree apprenticeships, they'll know that they're utterly driven, actually, by industry. And so we've got a number of industry partners who are part of the Trailblazer group for that program. So we have UX, user experience design, for example. So we've got Barclays, BBC, Digital, the Co-op, the BP, Virgin, Matalan. You know, there's a whole host of people in that group who have fed into that process and actually will feed into everything that we do in Soda. So we're building, as David said, we're building those partnerships all the time and inviting new organisations into the Soda space.
Brilliant. I've got another question here. This is from Amy. She says I'm an art and film photographer. How can I get involved with Soda in terms of collaborations? I'm 23, so I assume I'm too old to apply for your courses. Well, I can answer there's a no to that. You're not too old to apply for our courses at all.
You're definitely not. No.
Yeah, so Paul, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah. So no, you're not definitely not too old to join us as a student. But also, if you want to join us as an individual, you can still do that. You know, the collab spaces that we're talking about, we want them to be as open as possible. So, you know, we're just at the moment exploring ways in which we can credit people who maybe not be students at the moment in MMU to be involved in those things. So, you know, it is. So please keep in touch with us, because there will be ways in which you can be involved in what we're doing, even without being a student. You know, so please don't think that because you're not a student, you're not included in this. That's not the case. We want you to be included. So please do keep in touch and contact us directly.
Yeah, and also we talked about lifelong learning earlier, aren't we? I know that there's an assumption, isn't there, that degree students are A-level students, that are undergraduates, but actually we're really interested in people no matter what point they want to come to us, you know, and no matter what one of our programs they're interested in. You know, age is certainly not a factor in stopping that happening.
Age isn't a limiter. Neither is you know how much you know about your subject necessarily. You know, what we're looking for are people who are interested, who are excited, who want to be involved in what we're doing. You know, who want to pick up skills, and actually, you know, those people who really genuinely want to enter the creative and digital sectors. That's what we want.
Yeah, I've got a question. I mean, sorry, Karen.
No, I was just going to say, just to finish that off, was just that, you know, in the digital, you hardly ever. I mean, Soda's new, right? You know, it's starting in 2021. Generally speaking, when you meet people in the digital, creative industries, you meet people from who've studied in lots of different disciplines previously, and they've spent a lot of time kind of learning digital practices. But you know, that only enriches, really, is my point. If you're worried about, you know, can I work with Soda? Is it the right partner for me? I think only enriches that kind of offer.
We've just got a couple of minutes left, and one question I want to try and get in, which we can hopefully answer quite quickly, is: will students get to work with the industry advisory group?
Yes, our industry advisory group is directly involved in Soda, so they will have access to those people, and it depends on what you mean by work with, but certainly they because there will be Soda students, they'll have access to our partners. Yeah, of course.
Okay, brilliant. And then I have got one more question that I think we've got time for, just to not leave anyone. Can you discuss, or I suppose we have to answer this it's a big question, but can you discuss the increasing importance and growth of the digital industry in light of the current global pandemic? I think for me, if I was going to take that, and then I'll go to David, it's what we've talked about, isn't it? This idea that making sure that we stay connected and embrace some of these new technologies would be my approach to to that, to how important those connections are going to be. But David, do you want to kind of take that a little bit further?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think obviously it's brought us all online. It's all made us think about distance working, which means we're very much more, I think Beth, she's talked about earlier, it's normalized a lot of technologies that were maybe a bit more professional, a little bit more like what you did if you really used, Zoom or Skype if you really had to. And now they're very, very commonplace and normal and every day. But also I think that's kind of fueling industries. I'm thinking about like ed tech, educational technology, where you're seeing educators at all levels saying, okay, well, how do I, if we have another lockdown, or if we have to change teaching methods for this, that or the other restriction, how do we do that in a way which is engaging and which is going to support learners' mental health, is going to engage them and make them enjoy learning, and yes, we've got face-to-face, this kind of video conferencing technology, but what else? We've got so many different technologies that could come into play, and I think that the person asking the question seems right in what they seem to be inferring, which is, I think you're going to see a lot of growth, in particular in educational technology from our point of view. And that's why it's something we're really hot on trying to develop, I think.
And actually, it's something
we're all adapting.
It's something that we're developing too. So, we're exploring a program in exactly what David was saying. So please keep your eye on how the curriculum develops in SODA. Yeah.
That's been lovely. I wish we had more time for questions and more discussion, because I could personally talk about collabs and SODA all day. But we're kind of out of time now. So all there is left to say is thanks to David and Paul for taking us through collabs. And thanks to you all out there for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed your time with us and learned some things about SODA. There is a slide for you to get in touch with us later. So please use that to get back in touch and talk to us. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.